Hello everyone, so now that our zombie sauropod is done, it's time for some more ornithischian fun. To be more precise, we're going to be building a Triceratops during this video and learning some fun facts along the way. Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well, and thank you for tuning into Moose Motion. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new, and be sure you have your post notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new content. Anyway, thank you for your support, it's highly appreciated. So during this video today, we'll be sculpting away till we have a skeleton of a Triceratops, you could say. And along the way, we'll be using some armature wire, one could say, and then pairing that with some Sculpey oven-baked clay, which is what I like to make the bones out of, you could say. But as I sculpt away on this armature doll Triceratops today, we'll be learning some fun facts about this dinosaur along the way. Triceratops was a genus of ornithischian dinosaur that lived in the late Cretaceous period, roaming the Earth 83.5 to 68 million years ago, or approximately when the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. It should be noted that dinosaurs like Triceratops lived on this planet for hundreds of millions of years during an era called the Mesozoic. The Mesozoic era lasted 180 million years, and it began roughly 250 million years ago and ended 65 million years ago, the time of the mass extinction event, which ended the age of the reptiles. Triceratops was a large animal, 30 feet long or 9 meters, at 3.5 meters tall at the shoulders or 10 feet tall at the skull. An average weight was about 6 to 8 tons, although some estimates get as high as 12. To put this in perspective, essentially this thing was a little bit larger than an African bull elephant. It did have shorter legs in comparison to other dinosaurs to help this quadruped support all of that weight. And it was, well, generally a little closer to the ground than some of our sauropod friends, mainly because it ate smaller plants. Its diet consisted mostly of conifers and ferns. However, well, it should be probably noted that this thing was rather strong, and if it wanted a, well, tree, it could easily knock it down. Definitely not a lot of things got in this thing's way in the underbrush of North America. Now, obviously, Triceratops is an herbivorous dinosaur, but interestingly, Triceratops had up to 800 teeth over the course of its lifetime. These teeth were arranged in groups of about 40 columns, with each column consisting of about 5 teeth that were constantly replaced. Now that's a lot of teeth for a dinosaur. Now it wasn't uncommon for a lot of herbivorous dinosaurs to have crazy numbers of teeth and replacing them every 3 months or so. To give you a comparison to other dinosaurs, most of your carnivorous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex for example, only had about 60 to 50 teeth and would replace them all in about 2 years, not 3 months. And seeing how we're on the topic of, well, its mouth, or dinosaur mouths, we should probably mention that it also had a parrot's-like beak at the front of its mouth to help with tough plant vegetation. And out of all the current dinosaurs that we know of, Triceratops was, well, the biggest culprit for teeth replacement. Now, aside from the shocking number of teeth, probably the most shocking fact that I actually learned about the Triceratops is, well, its name is kind of a lie. It doesn't actually have 3 horns, it only has 2. Now, considering its name, it translates to 3-horned face in Greek, I'm sure that comes as to a shock to a lot of people, probably not just me. I mean, don't let that fully disappoint you either. The Triceratops definitely had some massive horns. They were up to 4 feet long. And that is just the bone measurement. It's also thought that, well, these things probably had a keratin sheet on them, so they would have been even longer, wider, and sharper in real life. So that leaves us with the question of, well, what was at the tip of its nose then? Well, it would have been a sharp peak at the end of its nose made out of keratin. Basically, like, yes, your fingernails and your hair and what covered the actual horns themselves. Besides, that little stub probably wouldn't have been much use in a fight, but don't think it was at a disadvantage. Although it was herbivorous, that doesn't mean it was completely harmless. With its massive body and its massive horns, it could pretty much KO anything it wanted in a single goring. So the conclusion being, Triceratops is a dino no one definitely wanted to mess with. Besides being tough, it is considered to be among the most intelligent as well. The Triceratops skull was one of the largest in proportion to body size in comparison to other land animals. The largest known Triceratops fossil measures up to 8 feet and weighs up to half a ton. Because of the brain mass it can hold, it occupies an important place among the most intelligent dinosaurs. As you can tell, Triceratops had the brains and the bronze to fight great battles. The world's largest Triceratops fossil is known as Big John. At 23 feet and 5 inches long from snout to tail tip, Big John is known as the Guinness World Record holder for world's largest Triceratops. Big John's remains shed a lot more light on the epic fights that happen between Triceratopses. Just as animals today fight over territory or potential mates, apparently millions of years ago, many male Triceratopses, behaved in a similar fashion. In 2022, a team of paleontologists from Italy published evidence for this by studying Big John. Probably because his skeletal remains have, several large holes in the neck frill. And upon studying, they found these holes were gorings in the process of healing. In other words, Big John didn't die in battle, he just took a beating and sustained a war wound. Big John was sold at auction and is known as the most expensive Triceratops specimen, selling over $7 million US. On a quick little side note here, we'll be covering more on Big John in part 2 of this, series. So if you haven't already, and perhaps if you're new, be sure to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the content, be sure to smash that like button. Or comment below what you think of the project. And also, I should probably warn any of you who want to do a little bit more research on Big John, before you taint your search history like mine, be sure to type in Big John the Triceratops, because the first initial Big John thing is probably not going to get the results you want. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Titanoceratops. You'll be amazed just by looking at the fossils of these things. The Titanoceratops had an incredibly long, upward-pointing frill that could easily have been up to 8.7 feet long. This opposing dinosaur lived in the Cretaceous period 75 million years ago, what is now New Mexico. The discovery of this creature caused much controversy. On one hand, scientists assumed it was a close relative to Triceratops due to its skull features. However, others think the finding corresponds to an unusually large and old specimen of Pentoceratops. What is certain is that, with an estimated weight of 6.5 tons and a length of 22.3 feet, there was no animal that surpassed the magnificent Titanoceratops in North America at that time period. Now onto Horridus, the most complete Triceratops. Horridus is none other than the world's most complete Triceratops fossil ever found. It was named this because the remains correspond to 85% of a species of Triceratops known as Horridus, found on a Montana ranch in 2014. Scientists were surprised to find the head and spine were virtually intact. Currently, this specimen is on display in the Melbourne Museum in Australia. Too far away for ya? Then you can see it in all its splendor through the incredible 3D rendering on the museum's official website. And on a quick side note, when I found this detail out, I actually used that to, help this sculpture out. So yeah, be sure to go check it out. Now onto the rampant fossil market. The striking skulls and horns of the Triceratops aroused the ambitions of thousands of people around the world as luxury collector items, and the interest of treasure hunters. It's so common to find Triceratops remains in the Hellcrete Formation in the northern United States that many don't hesitate to dig up their properties, which would mean the loss and damage of large amounts of fossilized material. Although this is completely legal, academic paleontologists are greatly concerned, since any piece that has been traded or part of a private collection has completely lost its scientific value. Moreover, the craze for these fossils can lead to extreme situations, such as in 2008, a dinosaur fanatic bought a Triceratops named Cliff for $1 million and donated it to the Boston Museum of Science. Unfortunately, some unscrupulous fossil hunters tried to steal it and then sell the remains of this dinosaur. What do you think of this problem? Let me know in the comments below whether or not you think people generally have the rights to be collecting sort of dinosaur fossils such as this, or even digging them up privately in their own backyard, so to speak. I know those types of laws can drastically change on where you are technically from. I know here in Canada, things are kind of generally under the assumption that basically if it's a fossil, it is basically owned by the government as far as I know, so Depending on where you're from, the laws do change. As far as the dino black market goes, unfortunately, I don't really see that disappearing anytime soon, because there are some places where it's honestly quite prevalent, and that's where a lot of people make a lot of money. Spinosaurus is actually a very good example of that, because it's one of my favorite dinosaurs for one, but it's generally scavenged quite a lot, and you can find usually teeth for pretty cheap. But again, it generally kind of, well, renders the whole scientific process by a lot. In my honest opinion, I think people should be kind of allowed to collect fossils within reason. As long as there's no technical scientific value to be gained from the specimen, I think it's alright at that point. So as long as basically we've learned everything we can from it, then there's no need to be hoarding this necessarily in a scientific, well, collection at that point. The biggest issue paleontologists probably have with, say, fossil collecting / fossil black marketing is more or less they can't gain nearly as much research from it at that point, because it's either been removed from the ground and they can't find the original spot, as well as, well, there's been times where fossils have been heavily modified, and it's been a irritation to actually reverse the damage at that point. And the best known example of that I can think of is known as Irritator. So there's some homework for you, my dear viewers. Now it's time for the build rundown on this Triceratops skeleton. So during this video today, you could say we got the armature skeleton of this Triceratops all out of the way. And next time we'll be fleshing him all out with clay, you might say. However, the main focus today was the skeleton, obviously. That doesn't rhyme, but anyway, on a less poetic note, the materials used for this project are aluminum armature wire, sculpty oven-baked clay, a little plasticine you could say, and some tin foil to help save weight, you might say. We also used a variety of different tools, a rake, a ball stylist, a rubber sculpting tool, and some plasticine knives, and, well, a scalpel as well, which can be quite dangerous, so if you're using one of those, be careful. Rule of thumb, always cut away from your hands. And one thing I should admit to my viewers here, I did actually break the frill on this thing, which kind of sucked. That definitely did set me behind schedule, unfortunately, as I think it was up till like 2 in the morning that night trying to fix that, which was just a lot of off-camera work. So be very careful if you're going to be making these attempts on a Triceratops, because that frill is very delicate, and I believe I got a warning from one of my followers. Hello everyone, so during this video today, you could say we'll be adding clay to my Triceratops today, and learning about Big John, the world's biggest Triceratops to this day. During part 2 of the Triceratops project today, we'll be starting by adding some paint to the skull, you could say, before we get too heavy into the clay, because then it's too late to add the paint, you might say. But I'm happy to say that Big John will definitely be getting his muscles today. But as I sculpt away on this dinosaur today, we'll be learning some fun facts about the world's biggest Triceratops named Big John, so the scientists say. Now, before I get too carried away with the poetry today, let's get into the scientific facts about this dinosaur, I say. Big John is a 66-million-year-old Triceratops discovered in South Dakota in the Hell Creek Formation in 2014. 60% complete with a 2-meter-wide skull, and happens to be the world's largest Triceratops to this date. Big John lived in Lyromedia, an island continent that existed in the late Cretaceous, but obviously no longer exists to this day. But it stretched from present-day Alaska to Mexico. One thing is for certain, Big John is definitely a true marvel of the natural world, and is a truly remarkable discovery. Now it's time to learn more about the team that actually found it, the research that was conducted, and the impact that Big John has left on the paleontology community. You will also hear about the unique environment of the Hell Creek Formation and how it shaped the dinosaurs that lived there. Big John is a truly remarkable dinosaur skeleton, not just for its size, but also for its level of preservation. The Hell Creek Formation is famous for its well-preserved dinosaur fossils, and Big John is one of the best examples of this. The fossil was found over a period of several years, while the team gradually uncovered more and more bones as they dug deeper into the ground. When they finally had all the bones they needed, they began the process of putting the skeleton back together. One of the first things they noticed about Big John was its sheer size. Triceratopses in general are already large dinosaurs, however, Big John was definitely a lot larger than your average Triceratops. With the complete skull measuring just over 8 feet, scientists were able to estimate that the dinosaur would have been about 40 feet long and would have weighed up to 12 tons. To help put this into perspective, the average T.rex weighs about 8 to 9 tons, so Big John was, well, big. It should be noted that these two dinosaurs are technically different species. Well, I mean, they are technically both dinosaurs, but Triceratops belongs to the Ornithischian, whereas T.rex belongs to the Silurian families. Basically, they have two different hip structures, and I dive into more detail in that with my sauropod build. So if you'd like to learn more about the difference between those types of dinosaurs, be sure to go check out part 3 of the sauropod project. Anyway, given that Big John was about 12 tons, this makes it one of the largest dinosaurs ever discovered, currently the largest Triceratops. Big John's skull was probably the most impressive. Aside from his massive biceps here, I mean, do you even lift, bro? I mean, definitely a reminder to eat your vegetables. The Triceratops is well known for its large bony frill, which surrounded the back of its skull, protecting it from predators as well as fellow Triceratops, which, well, we will learn about later and perhaps didn't protect it as much as one would hope. In Big John's case, the frill was particularly large and well preserved, which is rare for a fossil. The 3 or 2 horns on its head, see part 1 for details, they were also well preserved and would have been used for defense as well as to attract mates. The rest of Big John's skeleton was also in remarkable condition, with many of the bones being nearly complete and remarkably intact. This allowed the team to learn a great deal about the Triceratops and how it lived. For example, they were able to examine the dinosaur's bones and were able to determine it was a fully grown adult, which isn't always easy with fossils. They also studied the dinosaur's legs, and they were rather short and sturdy that would be able to support the dinosaur's weight. And seeing how we're on the topic of its limbs, there's a common misconception of Triceratops and a lot of its, well, relatives that they would have had elephant-like feet, which is not entirely true. They would have had rather strange digits, essentially. Now, I think this common misconception has come from a few different sources, one of which being, well, toy manufacturers kind of being lazy and just using, well, elephant castings for their dinosaur toys, as well as Jurassic Park and Jurassic World not exactly having the most accurate anatomy for a lot of their dinosaurs. So you're probably wondering exactly what their feet looked like. If they weren't elephant feet, then what were they? Well, to be honest, I think they were generally shown this way to be a little less controversial because it's a little, well, easy to accept that this is a large animal that would have had feet like that. In reality, it's much stranger. Now, the back feet apparently only had 4 toes. I thought they had 3, but apparently one was slightly vestigial, so probably didn't have a claw on it. And then the front had 5, and 3 of which had claws, 2 of which were basically vestigial and didn't actually have claws on them. So I suppose the common interpretation for these dinosaurs was accurate in one way, the fact that it had 3 claws, but other than that, it is basically entirely incorrect. Now back to fun facts about Big John. In addition to his, well, massive size and well-preserved skeleton, Big John had an interesting history. The Hell Creek Formation is one of the most famous geological formations in the world, and it has been a site for many important dinosaur discoveries. The formation dates back to the late Cretaceous period, which was the last period for the dinosaur era, and provides a snapshot of the environment in which the dinosaurs lived, which wasn't always a very easy place to be by the sounds of things. And seeing how we're now working on, well, the actual skull, or covering up the skull with clay, I figured this would be an appropriate time to talk about, well, Big John's battle scars on his frill, which I previously kind of hinted towards in this video, as well as mentioned in part 1 in some vague detail for, well, obvious purposes here. Mainly because it provides us an interesting window into the life of these Triceratopses and how difficult it would have been. Now, Big John's frill has 3 distinct battle scars. two of which seem to be fairly minor and were probably fairly common injuries for Triceratopses, looking like puncture wounds from a horn. And the third hole, which is fairly large, which is placed more or less off to the side of the frill, which I'm sure you can see in the sculpture here, which was a bit of a cheap shot apparently from another Triceratops that decided to strike Big John from behind. And unfortunately, due to this laceration in his skull from a fight from his Triceratops, some scientists predict that this, well, could have caused Big John's demise. And personally sounds like I need to make another Triceratops in the future that is going to be battling Big John here, because that sounds like an interesting animation project, but I am getting ahead of myself. It is now time for the build rundown. So you could say this Triceratops skeleton definitely gained a lot of weight today in the form of clay. We also got a bit of painting out of the way, and some off-camera work, I must say, was some clear coat to the skull, I say, because that would have been kind of boring to watch, I say. We also got the basic shape of this Triceratops out of the way, and formed a lot of muscles today. Now that part 3 is on the way for this dinosaur, I say, we'll be adding a lot more details next time, you could say, where there is plenty more painting and sculpting to take away, like the eyeballs need to be in their place, I must say. Ugh. One also might say that there's some interesting details coming this dinosaur's way to keep this sculpture scientifically accurate, I say. So be sure to stay tuned, I say. Hello everyone, so I'm happy to say during this video today we'll be finishing off my Triceratops, you could say, and learning some fun facts about this dinosaur along the way, and be setting him free later into the wild, you could say. So during the third installment of this dinosaur project today, we'll be going over a lot of details, you could say. Like some counter shading, one could say, as well as some stripes for this dinosaur later on in this video, I say. You could also say we'll be getting fancy with that frill later on in this video today, but we'll keep that aside for safekeeping, I say. And we'll be working with a headless body for most of the day, because we don't want to do a whole bunch of resculpting with that face, I say. But as I sculpt away with this plaster scene today, we'll be learning some fun facts about Triceratops today. But before I get too carried away with the poetry today, here is a quick recap on this dinosaur, I say. Triceratops was a large ornithischian dinosaur that lived in the late Cretaceous period, up until the mass extinction 65 million years ago. Its diet consisted of plants and was a large animal, weighed up to 6 to 12 tons, or approximately the size of an African bull elephant. It also supported a rather large head on its robust body. The skull could be up to 8 feet long on some specimens. Approximately 1/3 of its body size is a good average for its skull, and could weigh up to half a ton, and it's thought to be one of the most intelligent dinosaurs due to the large brain in its, well, rather large skull. And its name translates to three-horned face, and in part 1 we learned, well, that's not entirely true, because apparently it only has 2 true horns. Now that we've done a quick recap on this dinosaur, we're going to be diving into some, well, more niche topics, as well as its, well, fighting capabilities against certain dinosaur opponents that lived in the same time period. But first we'll cover the uses of its neck frill. Now, the big question is, a prominent neck frill just for protection? Well, apparently, this one could have had up to 3 functions. Yes, it was like a defense system as an impenetrable shield, a very effective one indeed. Another possible function was to give signals to other herd members. As it was composed of a number of blood vessels below the surface, it's likely the frill had bright colors to warn off hungry predators, or a possible display feature to attract mates. Now, I personally really like this idea and kind of wish it was shown in more animations, and so I definitely capitalized on this on my sculpture later on in the video by giving him some nice bright red and orange colors in his frill. And finally, and assuming the Triceratops was cold-blooded, the frill could have been used as a thermal regulatory system, acting like a radiator. Now it's time to get ready for action! Time to talk about the Triceratops' fighting capabilities. First opponent, Triceratops versus Ankylosaurus. Not only were these two dinosaurs massive and heavily armored, but they both could have easily fended off Velociraptors from Jurassic Park or a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Furthermore, both these existed in the Cretaceous period, and in case you had any doubts, it's very likely at some point these large herbivores fought over limited resources. Now that begs the question, who would win in a battle? As we already covered in part 1 and at the beginning of this video for a brief recap, the Triceratops had a rather large brain, so it might have been a bit more skillful in battle / more, well, strategic. As far as weapons, Triceratops had its large horns and, well, large neck frill for protection. However, the Ankylosaurus is no slouch with its cool armor and deadly sledgehammer for a tail. So that leads us with the question, could the Triceratops horns handle an Ankylosaurus? Well, the Ankylosaurus would only be saved by being shorter and out of range of the Triceratops' horns. Unfortunately, the sides of the Triceratops would be easy targets for the Ankylosaurus' killer tail. However, the Triceratops being more massive, the Triceratops would probably try to use its immense strength to flip over the Ankylosaurus, and then pierce its soft underbelly. What do you think the end result would be? Let me know in the comments below. Now on to our next opponent, T.rex versus Triceratops. These two massive dinosaurs appeared at the same time in the swamps and forests of western North America about 65 million years ago. It's very easy to assume that Tyrannosaurus rex wouldn't hesitate to go after Triceratops. The Triceratops was pretty quick for its immense size, reaching speeds of 20 miles per hour or 32 kilometers per hour. The T-rex was a bit behind at 17 miles per hour or 27 kilometers per hour. I just want to briefly mention that, generally speaking, the speed of Tyrannosaurus rex is highly, well, debated. There's many different speeds of this thing out there. However, the sources that I was able to get during this video, essentially that's around the range that Tyrannosaurus rex would run because, well, it's so heavy it couldn't actually do a full run. However, there's more on Tyrannosaurus rex in one of my older videos, which I'll provide a link in the description to. However, we're getting a little sidetracked. This video is about Triceratops, and, well, at the moment, Triceratops versus Tyrannosaurus rex. Anyway, back to the fight. It's true that Triceratops had its frill and large, powerful horns for protection, which some scientists believe that these adaptations were actually evolved in this dinosaur, well, from results of being preyed on by things like T-rex. However, these had to withstand a bite force of 35,000 or even 50,000 newtons of force from a Tyrannosaurus rex. That's more than twice the average crocodile. Plus, the T-rex had better vision and better hearing than the Triceratops. Although Triceratops may have weighed a little bit more than Tyrannosaurus rex, and would be able to inflict serious damage, it probably wouldn't be enough. Apparently, T-rex got away with it most of the time, and the findings support this conclusion. Tooth marks have been found in many Triceratops fossils, although it's uncertain whether this is from carrion or predation. Although I'm pretty sure it's mainly predation, because I'm pretty sure I've heard of stories of Triceratops bones having, well, tooth marks being lodged inside them, and, well, the Triceratops bones slowly healing it over time. Anyway, on to the next topic. The Triceratops from Jurassic Park. Remember the sick Triceratops from the '93 original Jurassic Park? Although it's mentioned in a scene that it could be poisoned from West Indian lilac, the key to solving the mystery was the mentioning of they got sick every 6 weeks. However, in the movie, the mystery was never fully solved. In the book, Dr. Sattler took a look at the stones and solved it. Gastroliths! The Triceratops wasn't constantly sick because the West Indian lilac fruits aren't in its diet, but it accidentally consumed them while it was swallowing gizzard stones. Now, as a person that has gone through the book about 8 times or more at this point, I think, and is currently listening to it again, I'm pretty sure it was a Stegosaurus in the book, not a Triceratops. I'm not exactly 100% sure on this statement, but at any rate, if you haven't actually checked out the book for it, I definitely recommend doing that. It is far better than the movie as far as I'm concerned. However, viewer discretion is advised. It's definitely a far more gory adaptation than the movie. Another memorable Triceratops moment is the appearance in the second installment, which is the specimen caught by the mercenaries, unleashing chaos and destroying the hunter's camp. And in the third installment, they're only seen as part of the species running around Isla Sorna. In the fourth installment, you can see several Triceratops running around in the gyrosphere area. In Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Triceratops is seen in the Lockwood Manor with its offspring and then escapes at the end. Which one's your favorite? My personal favorite is, well, the original Jurassic Park. However, I do have a soft spot for, well, the third installment with the Spinosaurus because that's my favorite dinosaur. And now one more fun fact about the Triceratops itself. Was it a herd animal or solitary rover? The Triceratops didn't live in herds, as most fossils have been of solitary individuals. At least that's believed to be the case for adult specimens. In the Hell Creek Formation, USA, it's common to discover small groups of Triceratops in juvenile groups. Also, apparently a family group of 3 individuals was found in 2012 in Wyoming. Although it's hard to tell if this was a couple with their offspring, or 2 females and a juvenile they were caring for. Therefore, it's likely Triceratops lived in small family groups, up to a certain age rather than large herds. Now their extinction. A generally accepted theory is that a large asteroid hit the Earth about 65 million years ago, causing the massive extinction event of any animal that couldn't fly, swim, or burrow into the ground. However, many argue Triceratops along with other herbivorous dinosaurs were in decline, or even extinct due to climate change because of increased volcanic activity before the Big Impact. So, when did the Triceratops go extinct? Before or after? The unearthed remains of Triceratops 5 inches below the geological layers of the mass extinction shows us that this dinosaur was around until the time of the impact in the late Cretaceous Tertiary period. It's definitely a shame these things went extinct, because I would definitely love to see one in real life. However, I do have the next best thing, which is, well, making clay models of these dinosaurs and then releasing them into the wild. Seeing how it's springtime here in Canada, I was able to get some beauty shots of this thing out in my backyard, so it actually looks pretty cool. Now, before I leave you with the beauty shots, I do have one small request. An overwhelming amount of you have been requesting a Godzilla build, so in my response to that, I want 1,000 subscribers. So we are very close to that benchmark, so if you can help, well, push the channel to get to that 1K mark, I will make a Godzilla, or the King of the Monsters. At any rate, upon that small request, I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like if you did, and comment below what you think of this project, and perhaps a request for the next dinosaur. I think I might make a Velociraptor up next, though. Be sure to share with your friends so you can help the channel grow, and maybe we can reach that 1K mark very soon. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. And quick shout out to Dragonclaw for spotting Milton the Moose in the previous Triceratops build. Hey, thank you for watching. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. Anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.